The road to the mining town was shrouded in a dense fog that clung to the windshield like a ghostly veil. As the mining inspector's car crept along the winding path, the headlights barely cut through the opacity, making the journey feel like a descent into another realm. He had been sent to investigate the sudden halt in coal production, a task that seemed straightforward until he reached the outskirts of the town. There, an unsettling silence pervaded, broken only by the occasional creaking of the old rusted sign that marked the town's entrance, swinging ominously in the wind as if warning him to turn back. The inspector, driven by a mix of duty and curiosity, pressed on. But the town that greeted him was far from welcoming. The streets were deserted, the houses dark, and an oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily in the air. It was as if the town itself was holding its breath, watching his every move through the cracks in the curtains and the shadows between the buildings. He found lodging at a small, rundown apartment at the edge of town, the only place that seemed willing to take in a stranger. The owner, a gaunt figure with wary eyes, handed him the keys without a word, his silence more foreboding than any warning. That night, the inspector lay in bed, listening to the unsettling sounds of the town, the distant howl of a dog, the wind whispering secrets to the old creaking structures, and something else, footsteps stealthy and deliberate, moving around the building. The inspector's unease grew as he realized he was not alone. The footsteps stopped right outside his door, followed by the smell of gasoline. Before he could react, flames licked under the door, spreading rapidly. Panic surged as he scrambled to his feet, the fire's glow casting monstrous shadows on the walls. The window was his only escape, and he threw himself out into the night, landing hard on the ground below. His car, his lifeline, was a few agonizing meters away. He sprinted, every shadow a potential assailant, every sound a threat. The car roared to life under his desperate hands, and as he sped away from the inferno behind him, he glanced in the rearview mirror. The town was dark once more, as if nothing had happened, but the inspector's heart pounded with a terror he couldn't shake off. Yet as he reached the town's boundary, a battle raged within him. Fear urged him to keep driving, to escape this nightmare, but his duty, his need to understand, anchored him to the spot. With the town's sinister silhouette looming in the distance, the inspector made his decision. He turned off the engine, his resolve steeling him against the terror. He would uncover the town's secrets, no matter how dark or deep he had to delve. The dawn barely touched the horizon, casting a pale light that struggled to penetrate the thick fog enveloping the town. The inspector, driven by a relentless determination to uncover the truth, made his way towards the mine. The path, overgrown and barely visible, twisted through the dense woods that bordered the town, as if nature itself conspired to keep the secrets hidden within its depths. As he approached the mine, the inspector concealed himself in the underbrush, his senses heightened by the eerie silence that blanketed the area. The entrance to the mine loomed before him, an ominous maw in the earth that seemed to breathe a cold, unnatural air. It was then he noticed the townsfolk. One by one, they emerged from the shadows, converging on the mine's entrance with a purposeful stride that belied a sinister unity. Their faces, illuminated by the faint light of dawn, were expressionless, their eyes vacant, as if under the spell of some unseen force. The inspector watched, a chill creeping down his spine, as they entered the mine, their figures swallowed by the darkness within. Time passed, and as the sun climbed higher, casting its light on the sinister tableau, the inspector observed a transformation. Those who emerged from the mine bore a stark contrast to the ones who had entered. Their faces, previously blank, now radiated a disturbing euphoria. Their eyes glazed over with an otherworldly bliss. It was as if they had touched something profound, something that had changed them fundamentally. Coupled by a mix of fear and curiosity, the inspector prepared to follow, to witness for himself the source of this transformation. But his movements betrayed him. A twig snapped underfoot, a sound so trivial yet thunderous in the silence. The euphoric townsfolk turned as one, their blissful expressions morphing into twisted visages of anger and malice. The chase began. A group of men, their humanity seemingly stripped away by whatever dwelled within the mind, pursued the inspector with a relentless, terrifying determination. He ran, adrenaline fueling his escape as he darted through the trees, the angry shouts of his pursuers echoing behind him. It was a nightmare brought to life, a hunt where he was the prey, and the hunters were fueled by something beyond natural rage. Reaching his car felt like a miracle. The engine roared to life just as his pursuers broke through the tree line, their faces contorted in fury. As he sped away, the inspector's heart pounded against his chest, not just from the chase but from the realization of the town's dark heart. The mine held a power over its people, a sinister influence that transformed them, made them protect its secrets at any cost. The inspector knew then that the mystery of the mine was deeper and more terrifying than he could have imagined. Whatever the townsfolk had experienced within its depths had bound them to it, body and soul. The drive back to the nearest town was a blur, his mind reeling from the horrors he'd witnessed and the daunting task that lay ahead. He needed help, allies who would believe the unbelievable, for the mine was not just a place of work, it was a place of darkness, where the boundaries of reality and nightmare blurred into a terrifying new existence. The neon sign of the bar flickered in the twilight, casting an eerie glow on the inspector's weary face as he pushed through the door. The nearest town, unlike the mining village, buzzed with the mundane noise of everyday life. A stark contrast to the ominous silence he had fled, yet beneath this facade of normalcy, a shadow of fear lingered, a silent testament to the influence of the mine. The bar was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of stale beer and the murmur of hushed conversations. As the inspector made his way to the counter, the room fell into an uneasy silence, the patron's eyes following him with a mix of curiosity and wariness. He sensed their reluctance to speak even before he voiced his questions. His inquiries about the mining town were met with cold stares and tight-lipped responses. "Stay out of it," one patron muttered, his eyes darting away. Another simply shook her head, her eyes filled with a fear that spoke volumes. It was clear that the mine's sinister reputation extended far beyond its physical boundaries, casting a long shadow over the neighboring towns. Frustration and a growing sense of desperation gnawed at the inspector as he left the bar. The isolation of the mining town, both geographical and psychological, was a barrier far more formidable than he had anticipated. It was then, under the cloak of night and driven by a relentless pursuit of truth, that he made the call to the security service of the mining company. The voice on the other end of the line was skeptical at first, the inspector's tale sounding more like the ramblings of a madman than a credible report. But as he recounted the events, the hostility of the townsfolk, the eerie transformation of those who had ventured into the mine, a silent understanding took hold. The decision was made to send a security squad to the town, a team equipped to deal with whatever they might find. The night passed in a restless blur, the inspector's mind racing with scenarios of what lay ahead. The thought of returning to the mining town filled him with a dread he could not shake, a palpable fear that clung to him like the fog that shrouded the town itself. Yet, beneath the fear lay a burning need to uncover the truth, to shine a light on the darkness that enveloped the mine and its people. Dawn broke with a promise of revelations, and as the inspector met with the security squad at the edge of town, He felt a flicker of hope. These were men and women who had faced danger before. Their determination mirrored in their steady gazes and the grim set of their jaws. Together, they prepared to confront the unknown, to tear away the veil of secrecy that the mining town had drawn around itself. The convoy of black SUVs rolled into the mining town at dawn, an ominous procession that pierced the morning mist like a blade. The inspector, seated beside the lead security officer, felt a knot of apprehension tighten in his stomach as the familiar, unwelcoming silhouette of the town emerged. The decision to confront the town's secrets head-on, with the support of the security squad, was a bold move. One that carried with it the risk of unleashing forces they might not be able to control. As they entered the heart of the town, the atmosphere tensed like the calm before a storm. The streets were eerily empty, the silence oppressive, a stark contrast to the previous visit's hostile reception. The inspector couldn't shake the feeling of being watched from the shadows, of malevolent eyes tracking their every move. Suddenly, the illusion of calm shattered. Gunshots rang out, echoing off the buildings with a deafening roar. Bullets pelted the sides of the SUVs, sparking off the metal. The security team, trained for combat, reacted with swift precision, taking cover and returning fire. But their assailants were the townsfolk themselves, their faces twisted into grotesque masks of rage and fear, as if the town had possessed them, turning neighbors into soldiers defending a dark and sinister cause. The inspector cut in the chaos, Whitney said, the surreal horror of the situation unfold. The townsfolk, who should have been miners and shopkeepers, fought with the ferocity of the damned, as if driven by a power that transcended their own lives. The air filled with the smell of gunpowder and the screams of the wounded, a nightmarish tableau that seemed to defy reality. The security squad managed to push back the initial assault, taking strategic positions around the town square. But the victory was hollow. The inspector saw the cost in the eyes of the injured, the grim determination of the security team as they regrouped, and the unsettling realization that the townsfolk were not just protecting a secret, they were under its spell, willing to die for it. The call for police backup was made amidst the gunfire, a desperate plea for reinforcement in the face of an enemy that was both known and incomprehensibly alien. When the police arrived, they were met with a scene of chaos that tested the limits of their training and understanding. Together with the security squad, they managed to quell the violence. But the inspector knew this was only the beginning. The townsfolk were eventually subdued, their remaining fighters corralled into an improvised holding area. But their eyes bore the same glazed look of euphoria mixed with defiance, as if their spirits were no longer their own. It was a chilling reminder of the mine's influence, of the supernatural hold it had over the town. With the town temporarily secure, a mixed group of security personnel, police officers, and the inspector prepared to venture into the mine. The inspector felt a deep, unnerving dread as they approached the mine entrance, a gaping maw in the earth that seemed to breathe a cold, dark invitation. The group, armed and resolute, stepped into the darkness, leaving the daylight behind. The mine's entrance swallowed the group whole, a descent into the bowels of the earth that felt like crossing the threshold into another dimension. The initial steps were guided by the beams of their flashlights, slicing through the darkness, revealing the jagged contours of the tunnel walls. The air was thick, laden with an unplaceable, metallic scent that made each breath a labor. The inspector, leading the way with a security officer, felt an inexplicable pull deeper into the mine, as if the very darkness beckoned them forward. The deeper they ventured, the more the atmosphere changed. It wasn't just the oppressive darkness or the cold that seemed to seep into their bones. It was the sensation of being watched, of unseen eyes observing their every move with cold, calculating interest. Whispers seemed to echo through the tunnels, words unintelligible, yet filled with an eerie melody that tugged at the edges of their sanity. The group pressed on, driven by a mixture of determination and the unnerving allure that seemed to emanate from the heart of the mine. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern, its vastness lost in the impenetrable blackness. Here, the air vibrated with a palpable energy, a thrumming that resonated with the very rock around them. The inspector felt a wave of dizziness wash over him, a disorienting blend of euphoria and terror that gripped his mind. The flashlights flickered, then died, plunging them into darkness. Panic threatened to take hold, but then, inexplicably, the cavern began to illuminate with a soft, ethereal glow. The source of the light was impossible to discern, but it bathed the cavern in a spectral luminescence that revealed its secrets. Crystals jutted from the walls and ceiling, pulsing with an inner light, their facets casting dancing reflections that mesmerized and beckoned. The group stood transfixed, their original mission forgotten, as the cavern's beauty enveloped them in a seductive embrace. It was in this moment of vulnerability that the mind revealed its true nature. Visions began to manifest before their eyes, ethereal scenes of lives untouched by sorrow or pain, of desires fulfilled and dreams realized. Each member of the group was ensnared by their own personal paradise, a world tailored to their deepest longings, so compelling that the thought of leaving became unbearable. The inspector, too, found himself lost in a vision of a life far removed from the danger and despair of his current reality. It promised an escape, a sanctuary from the horrors he had faced. Yet somewhere within him, a remnant of resolve stirred, a flicker of awareness that this paradise was a prison, a gilded cage designed to entrap and enslave. As the spell of the visions began to wane, the group found themselves reluctant to leave the cavern's allure. The return to the tunnel was a journey back to reality, each step away from the light a painful severance from the euphoria they had experienced. They emerged from the mine changed, not just in mind but in spirit, carrying with them the seductive poison of the visions that had ensnared their souls. Outside, the world seemed duller, the air heavier with the burden of reality. They spoke little, their minds still ensnared by the afterglow of their experiences. To the waiting police officers, the group's transformation was palpable. Their eyes glazed with a distant, haunted look. The mine's allure had claimed them, binding them to its will with chains forged from their own desires and fears. As they walked past the police cordon, their assurances that all was well within the mine rang hollow, a facade to conceal the truth of their enthrallment. The town, with its secrets now shared by the newcomers, welcomed them with open arms, enveloping them in its sinister embrace. The inspector, once a beacon of determination and resolve, found himself adrift in a sea of doubt and longing. The mine had shown him a glimpse of another life, a siren's call that whispered of happiness and fulfillment, yet beneath the allure lay the stark reality of the mine's dark heart, a truth he could neither fully embrace nor deny. The battle for his soul, and the souls of those who had ventured into the depths with him, was far from over. The mine's allure was a curse, a beautiful lie woven from the fabric of their darkest dreams and deepest fears. The aftermath of the mine's exploration was a silence that enveloped the town like a shroud. The inspector, once driven by a fervent desire to expose the mine's secrets, now found himself adrift in a haze of apathy and disillusionment. The transformation wasn't his alone. Each member of the group who had ventured into the mine's depths carried the same haunted, distant look, their spirits ensnared by the visions that had promised them everything yet taken so much more. In the days that followed, the town seemed to awaken from its hostile stance, adopting a facade of normalcy that was as unsettling as it was transparent. The townsfolk, including those who had once resisted the outsiders with violent fervor, now greeted them with eerie smiles, their eyes gleaming with a knowing glint. It was as if the mine had woven them all into a tapestry of secrecy and silence, a community bound by the shared experience of an otherworldly allure. It was only when communication with the town abruptly ceased, when relatives and friends of the townsfolk and the security team received nothing but silence in response to their calls and letters, that the severity of the situation became apparent. Concern turned to alarm and alarm to action. The army was mobilized, a response to the growing fear that whatever had taken hold in the mining town posed a threat far beyond its borders. The day the army arrived was marked by an oppressive tension that hung over the town like a storm cloud. Armored vehicles rolled through the streets, soldiers moving with purposeful determination as they began the operation to secure the town and uncover the truth of the mine's influence. The townsfolk offered no resistance, their smiles unwavering as they watched the soldiers with an unsettling serenity. It was as if they knew the futility of opposition, their fates irrevocably tied to the mine that had claimed their souls. The army's efforts to investigate the mine were met with obstacles that defied logical explanation. Equipment malfunctioned, compasses spun wildly, and drones sent into the depths lost signal, their feeds cutting to static before ceasing altogether. The soldiers who entered the mine spoke of a palpable sense of dread, of whispers that echoed through the tunnels, promising salvation and damnation in the same breath. And then, silence. The mine seemed to swallow all attempts to uncover its secrets, its influence spreading like a contagion among the soldiers, sowing discord and fear. Reports of desertion, of soldiers found wandering the woods, their minds lost to madness, began to circulate, a testament to the mine's insidious power. In the end, the decision was made to seal the town, to classify the mine as a matter of national security. The townsfolk, including the inspector and the security team, were never seen again, their fate a closely guarded secret. Rumors of what lay within the mine's depths persisted, whispers of a darkness that was not just physical but existential, a void that had claimed not just a town, but the souls of all who had dared to uncover its secrets.